Thank you very much. 20 minutes before the hour, Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan. Curtis Greco is with us. Politics is our family business. He's the author of Blind Vision. It's a book series and the founder of the Imperfect Messenger Foundation. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
I'm looking at I'm not too bad. I'm looking at an article here that I saw in the Telegraph from the UK, and the headline poses the question, does Barack Obama want to be reelected in 2012? And as you read into the article, it says there are few Americans who see themselves as bigger than the presidency, but Obama could well be one of them. What do you make of that?
Well, first part of your question, does he want to be reelected? I guess the best I can do on that one is to ask Mr. Obama if your plans are to do just that. We might want to focus on some functional responses to a degrading economic environment. I think that on the other half of the question regarding whether or not Americans or how Barack Obama sees himself, I'm not entirely sure whether or not he's connected the dots on the issue of the responsibility of all presidents, and that is from a position of leadership in an environment that we all see, and I think particularly in the state of Michigan, is equally as addressing the issue is equally, perhaps more severely than most states, clearly can see that there is a need for an economic or a leadership response to an economic problem.
Well, wasn't the stimulus package a leadership response to an economic problem?
Well, yes, it is a response. Question is whether or not we could have done better. I think the stimulus package presently, just on the specific stimulus package at $1.3 trillion, has done a fine job of showing what perhaps may be the worst possible responses. It's done well in establishing and perpetuating government in the capacity of attempting to stimulate economic response, but at the same token, it's also showed the limitations of that. Economics from a perspective of a collegiate environment of being purely theoretical, you can explain or create all sorts of systemic responses from the position of government. Well, one of the things that we tried to do, or from the book series itself, is take a different look at it and look at past successes and see if we can draw some connections to them, and perhaps consider looking at them from the standpoint of this is not working. How about if we look at something that does?
Well, there will be people who will say, maybe Democrats too, give it a chance. We're just getting moving here. It's going to take time. Nobody said it was going to happen overnight. I think even President Obama said that in the campaign.
Sure. I mean, again, this is one of the great issues I try to address in the work that I do, and that is we look over the horizon in the media, and we are great. We do a fine job of talking about problems that previous administrations have caused, and we can do really well at after the fact pointing fingers. But what I try to look at is to avoid the conflict issue of who's at fault, because particularly in the case of the last 25, 30 years, either part of the aisle is equally culpable at the issue, and so I try to look at it from a different perspective. Everyone else can talk about what's wrong. I'd say I took a look at it and took a strategic response, or attempted to take a strategic response, and actually creating concepts of what we can actually do. It's great to generate money or throw money at public works projects and freeway infrastructure improvements and all that sort of stuff, which is fine. I mean, there is a role for government in that capacity. But when you look at it from an economic standpoint as a fundamental truth of what drives economies, the individual, on the individual private sector level, we can clearly see that when you look at historic economic success in the United States, it's always been driven from that level. And I think that's where we need to focus on it. I think we need to take a serious look at the drain on the private sector and what this has done to it, whether it's at the mortgage level, on the real estate market, whether we look at it at the banking level, or we look at it in the tax level, or we look at it on the industrial or the industry level.
Would you have supported the automotive industry bailout?
No, I would not have. The failures of the automotive industry are not a failure of the industry from the standpoint of public demand. Clearly, the public's demand, the demand by the public for a vehicle, for transportation, individual transportation, has clearly been there. If that weren't the case, then how would one explain the successes of Honda, Toyota, et cetera, et cetera? So if to look at stimulus money going towards automotive industry as a way of as a way of generating a economic response, I think we really have to look at what caused the problem in the first place. A monopoly, the big problem of monopoly is not that a business controls a market. It really is what becomes of choice. Excuse me. And I think that when you look at General Motors or Ford or Chrysler, and specifically U.S. automakers, clearly the opportunity was there for success. So the question really shouldn't be, or in my mind wasn't, whether or not there was a demand for the product. The question really is why was the industry not capable of responding to it? And I don't know that you can throw money at those situations and create a viable response that's sustainable.
How can people find your book series, Blind Vision?
The Blind Vision series, of course, is available at your bookstores. It's also online at the Imperfect Messenger Foundation's website, which is simply theimperfectmessenger.com. There's 3 books presently out. Book 1 is referred to as We Hold These Truths. Book 2 is Value Given, Value Received. And the present release is Valor and Prosperity.
Theimperfectmessenger.com or any bookstore is where you can find the Blind Vision book series. Curtis Greco is the author. Thank you very much. 14 before the hour.